So, welcome to our fourth episode of Talking Hands. I'm the Prodigal Fool, and I'm joined by my co-blogger on the Prodigal Guide, Straight-Six.
We're a bit jovial tonight, guys. Don't take it personally.
So, listen, by now you know the drill. So, Talking Hands is a very, very simple concept. As we all too often do, Six and I are sitting here over a drink or two. It's a dry old do. Are you going to pour?
With great pleasure.
At last. We're having a drink or two, and as usual, we're discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly bottom line of a particular watch. And we thought you guys might want to join us. So today we're looking at my very own Panerai historic Luminor Marina, to the real aficionados known as the PAM 111, one of the really simple versions of the current Panerai portfolio. The only complication, in fact, is the sub-seconds hand on the dial there.
Oh, that's a very serious complication.
Well, yeah, that's my point.
They really went all out.
It's a simple watch. It's part of its charm. So it's got a glass back that you can see there, and inside there is a modified ETA movement. What's the good about the PAM 111?
Well, look, guys. If you have any kind of an eyesight problem whatsoever, oh, I'm sorry.
Cheers.
To your good health and to yours.
Oh, crikey.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Yes, you were saying.
So, if you've got any kind of eyesight problem whatsoever, I'd venture to say the Panerai is definitely the watch for you. So, from a legibility perspective, a fabulous watch. I also venture to say it's a small point of detail, but I actually find the granularity on the dial to be kind of intriguing.
Yeah.
It's not slick or glossy as you find in a lot of watches, and the luminescent material that's used as well is also not as bright, not as perfected as it is in most other modern watches, and I think that's nice as well.
I don't know what you're going by. It's actually one of the brightest looms that I've ever seen.
Well, bright, yes, but I'm talking about the colouring. So if you've looked at, for example, you've got a sub, right?
Okay, in daylight it's subtle. Okay.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly, that's my point. So you'll see this. Yeah. I mean, in the dark, obviously, this will glow brighter than pretty much anything you can imagine. And to my last point, I very much enjoy and relish the endless changeability that you can have with this watch via the straps. I think most Paneristi, and yourself included, will know that there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different straps available for Panerais.
Yeah, I mean, you're bang on. I totally agree with you about the versatility, and I think most Panerai fans would I mean, that's part of the charm of the brand for them. It's certainly one of the things that I noted down in my top 3 good points for this watch. Versatility, or rather, I would actually call it changeability. Because I would call a Rolex Submariner versatile, in that without changing it, you could put it in any scenario. The Panerai is not like that. The Panerai is not versatile. The Panerai is changeable. And by that I mean simply that, simply by changing the strap, you can absolutely transform the character of the watch in a very dramatic way. And Panerai know this. And this is why when you open the box, when you first buy your Panerai, you'll find that it comes with a second strap, and it comes with the tool that you need to delicately unscrew the screws that you can see here and here on the strap.
Can I ask you one quick question, just to interrupt? With regards to the rubber strap that's provided alongside the standard strap, 2 questions. The first is, do you ever wear that bloody rubber strap? And the second is it actually that easy to change between the rubber strap and the standard and the other one?
Very, very simple answers. No, never wear it. It's not my style. But yes, it is really easy to change. I know that because I have changed the strap on this. As you can see, this is obviously not the original Panerai strap.
Actually, what do you have on it?
This is a strap from an outfit called Daluca in California, who make these sort of vintage, old leather straps. To be perfectly frank, I have since come across some far better vintage leather strap manufacturers than this. This is not a great strap, but I think it kind of suits the way that I personally choose to wear the Panerai. So, back to versatility.
Okay.
That's my point. You can make anything out of this that you want. Some guys put the Panerai rubber strap on, they've got a phenomenal butch-looking diving watch. Great, good for them.
Okay.
Other guys travel to Paris on the Eurostar and go and visit ABP and have some beautiful alligator strap put on their Panerai, and guess what? All of a sudden they've got a really cool, funky looking dress watch.
Makes sense.
This thing is versatile like you wouldn't believe.
Okay.
There are two more points that I'd make under the chapter of good on the Panerai and this particular model. The first, and I know I'm boring, I always seem to say this when we do these reviews, is provenance, the history of the watch, where it comes from, and therefore, where it's going, what the brand means.
You mean a bunch of Italian guys trying to find mines and ships?
That's one way of looking at it. Here's another way. This watch is, very, very close to the watch that was supplied in the 1930s to the Italian Navy. Okay, I love that. I love that it hasn't changed. I love that they're still making essentially the same watch. Mm-hmm. I also adore the Rolex connection. Most watch fans will know that Panerai is now owned by Richemont, but in the years where they were independent, and certainly in the early years, the mechanisms in their watches were supplied by Rolex. And I also love the fact that, they're Italian. They're not Swiss, and that's kind of fun.
Well, can I ask you a question to that? Is it family owned? Who is Panerai owned by?
No, I just said they're owned by Richemont now.
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the brand, being Italian. Of course,
strictly speaking, they're in Italian anymore.
No, of course not. Okay. But the character of the brand, I think, still is. And I think
enough.
that's not just marketing spiel. I mean, anyone can look at this and say this is not a Swiss watch. There's nothing Swiss about this. Final good point about Panerai that I want to quickly make, and that's just the design. Forget the movements, the heritage, all of that. Just look at the design of this watch. I mean, this looks like a Panerai and nothing else. You would never mistake this watch for anything other than a Panerai. There is DNA there that is so distinctive as to be unmistakable. The dial is absolutely, I think, absolutely brilliant in its simplicity. I mean, you ask any graphic designer, it's very, very hard to design something this simple but this effective. I love the sandwich dial. I mean, that gives it... The sandwich dial is the...
What do you mean by the sandwich dial?
So, yes, so to explain that, the numerals and the hour markers are not applied to the dial. They are actually... That effect is created by...
It's like cutouts?
Yeah, it's cutouts in the black dial going through to a loomed surface on the back. So there is... It's very subtle, and you have to be in person to see it. But there's a sort of 3D effect there. It's gorgeous. It's simple, but it gives it a depth that you only notice on close inspection. Very, very clever indeed. Mm-hmm. And of course, the trademark crown protector. I mean, this is nothing short of iconic. This thing.
Well, can you show me how it works? What do you do?
Effectively, I just have. So you've got this big metal thing that protects the crown. Mm-hmm. And then when you want to actually access the crown and operate it, you need to
pull the sleever back.
And isn't that just a joy? You can do
that's actually kind of cool.
You can do that for hours. You pull the crown out, and obviously you operate the crown as you would any normal watch. But there's a lovely firmness, solidity, and confidence that you find in operating that. And of course, it's a gimmick, but it's a joyful.
A quick point of detail to you, because we addressed this when we were talking about the Linda Verdelin. When you turn this crown, when you operate the crown, are you satisfied with the feel of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I would say for any Panerai that I've ever interacted with. Every interaction is rock solid. It just feels like it's made out of granite or something. Everything is just beautifully solid. Now, you'll tell me that's easy to do when you're making something as big, as chunky as that. Whatever. But it does feel super solid.
It pains me to say this, but with all the heritage and history of Panerai, there's something that I find quite farcical about this watch. There's something that I can't help but think is distended, comical, theatrical. Ooh. I think it relates back to the reality of it was a tool watch. It was a diver's watch to begin with.
Haven't we just finished talking about how iconic it is, how the design has endured for decades?
Absolutely.
Unchanged.
Absolutely.
Gorgeous.
So let me put it to you and to everybody who's watching this cockamamie video. Don't you think it a little bit silly when somebody ponies up in a three-piece freaking suit in the middle of London City with this baby strapped on their wrist, and you think, do you really need help figuring out what time it is? Are you that blind?
Well, okay, it's interesting you should say that, because one of the things that I noted on the bad column as notes, believe it or not, we make notes before we shoot these videos, was I think what you're now talking about, which is basically it has a slightly dodgy image.
Yeah.
So, whether it's loud-mouthed city traders, common footballers, or just bolt-up dumb action heroes, the Panerai brand certainly carries a few negative connotations. No doubt about that. I agree with you there.
And so I think this is where fundamentally it takes me. It's on the Panerai inhabits this bizarre crossover zone between mainstream watches and tool watches, and I don't think successfully straddles it. I think it's just because of its nature, like the fools pointed out, because of its DNA, its history, effectively it's locked into that tool side.
Okay, but Richemont would disagree with you. They're selling more than they can make of this. So.
Absolutely. Well, which brings me on to another point.
Not this model, but the range in general.
But this brings me on to another point. You may not be able to see this, folks, but there's a little marker down here indicating which number this one is out of a series of 3,000. Panerai have adopted a rather, to my taste, infuriating technique of telling you this is a limited number of 500, which you will only produce next year or never again. And this is done consecutively throughout the year to the, I think, eternal damnation of everybody who's out there on the market. I'd rather see them focus on a couple of lines that are more well thought through than just these perpetual series of 500.
No, I think you're wrong about that. I mean, this is what drives the modern Panerai myth. The guys who collect this love the fact that most of their models are in short supply, and this is what makes the brand. There are two things that I want to say beyond the fact that we've already mentioned the dodgy image. The first is, and I hate to say it, but it's true, this is not, at least for me, a comfortable watch to wear. I'm just going to put it on my wrist, actually, because we've had some... never let it be said that we don't listen to our viewers here on
fact,
Talking Hands.
If only we could remember which one of you told us they want to see this.
Well,
on
we've
the
only
wrist.
got two readers, so...
Was it Ivan or Chris?
I don't know. But one of them mentioned, hey, why don't you guys ever do wrist shots? So I'm going to do a wrist shot for you right now.
Okay.
Simply to make the point that... it's actually not the most comfortable watch to wear.
But why? Because this is digging into your wrist?
So I'm left-handed, so I wear my watch on my right wrist, which may be part of the problem, I don't know. But the strap, the buckle, they're big, so is the case. Everything's big, and all too often, they dig into my arm. It's just not that comfortable to wear.
Can I give a quick counterpoint to that? So I've got significantly thinner wrists than you do, and I think everybody knows that. I have been wearing this for the last hour and a half with absolutely no discomfort at all, much to my incredulity, because it's actually, what is it, a 45 millimeter in diameter?
44.
44.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I've never worn a 45 millimeter watch before with that much comfort.
And I think a lot of people say that. It's ironic, or perhaps unexpected. Guys with smaller wrists actually find bigger watches easier to wear because... I don't know, but somehow it works.
Yeah. So, for what it's worth.
The other bad thing that I would mention about this watch is that it's not a fiddy. Panerai fans will know what the fiddy is. It's to use its full reference, it's the PAM 127. So this was a 2002 special edition watch that they made with a 47, if you can imagine it, 47 millimeter 1950 style case, and I think at least it's maybe the closest that you can get to that sort of iconic image of the vintage Panerai. A really gorgeous watch. Of course, they're hugely sought after, and therefore they're, I think, overpriced for what they are. But even though they're overpriced, I think that's what I really like. Incidentally, the PAM 372 that they just released at SIHH is also very interesting. So that's the other bad thing, is that they're not the ultimate vintage-looking Panerai. Okay, and if I
to close that off, I think there were two quick points that I would make. One is, I think, the question of the movement in this one. This is an ETA movement that's using this one. As if I understand it, most of the recent models sport an in-house movement.
Yeah, they've just developed this P9000 in-house movement, which is great.
Yeah. So this is okay. This is a big step forward, particularly for those of us who are snobbish about.
But nothing wrong with ETA. I mean, and look at this. They've made some modifications to it. The swan regulator is theirs. They've increased the power reserve. A couple of other modifications. It's a beautiful looking movement.
I hope that all of our viewers are particularly impressed by the fact that you know how to say a swan regulator, a term that we've never used in these kinds of discussions before.
Well, I know how to say it. I read it on the internet. I don't know what it does, but Panerai did modify it.
Oh, they did. And I think, guys, you know, to close this off, I don't think, from my perspective, that there's anything wrong with the case per se, my remark about it being incredibly comfortable means that even the size doesn't bother me so much.
Yeah.
This watch is incredibly sensitive to the dial design. Now, you were talking about a FIDI. I'd throw at you the California dial.
So is that the tobacco dial, the brown dial?
No, the California dial was the mix of Roman and Arabic numerals.
Oh,
if I'm mistaken,
yeah,
was that
hideous.
used?
Hideous.
I don't know whether that was used in.
I need some more whiskey.
I don't
Hideous.
remember whether that was Luminor or whether it's in the radio mirror.
I think they did it in both ranges, didn't they?
Okay,
Eventually?
it's possible, guys, and maybe one of you will point it out to us. But something like that stands out in my eyes as very different, making this work. So I'd venture to say simply that once again, I find by virtue of the fact this is such a massive case, it is even more sensitive to the kind of dial design that's thrown.
My answer to the ugly bottom line is, well, first of all, would I buy one? Well, I already have. I certainly don't want to sell it. But if I was buying again today, I would probably seek out a FIDI or perhaps one of the new in-house, the new models with the in-house movement with the P 9000. Yeah, it's 9,000. Was it 3,000?
You're supposed to be the Panerai expert.
I know. Well, I'm not, I think we all know I'm not an expert on anything.
You're just a buyer. You're an avid, enthusiastic buyer.
I'm pretty sure it's the P9000. Yeah, and like the 372, the PAM 372 that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, anything that sort of has that more vintage look is the way with Panerai.
Right, and I think proof is that a lot of guys like to strap these kind of vintage, beaten up leather straps.
Exactly. Look what I've done.
So
I've taken a watch that was made 2008. I think I bought this, and I put this beaten up old vintage leather strap on it to give it to try and get close to that look, which is this is an old Italian. It's not.
Okay, so
it was made by H-More in 2008, and let's not kill ourselves.
So we haven't we haven't succeeded on that, and that's why I venture to say that the more recent offerings, and we mentioned the 386, and what was it, the 387?
Yeah, I lose track. But what H-More have done, I think, very cleverly, and they're very in tune with their audience actually, is that the latest models that they just announced hark back to that old vintage look. And they're not alone in that. I mean, we've seen Bell and Ross do the same thing.
Very successfully, we might add.
Yeah, Jaeger LeCoultre doing their tributes to Polaris and various other vintage.
Deep Sea.
To Deep Sea, yeah. And Panerai going the same way. And God, I can't blame them because it looks great.
So, I mean, so before we kind of conclude, what do we make of this attempt at modern vintage? Do we think that that's a direction? I mean, without talking about every other watch brand, do we think that's something that suits a Panerai? Do we think it's something that's better than where they were before? Can they pull it off?
To me, it's like McDonald's. Okay, I don't want to like it. It's wrong. There's nothing. It's somehow going away from what food is supposed to be about, and yet, you know what? It looks and tastes so damn good. So why wouldn't you want to consume it? Yeah, I'm kind of. It feels wrong to fake the look of vintage,
being aged,
to fake, and yet we can't get around the fact that the final product looks nice. So
it does look nice, and I by the way, I'd agree with that, but I'd agree with that particularly for Panerai, because the prices for real vintage Panerais are, as I remember,
well, for Panerai particularly, it suits the brand, I think.
Yeah, and I'd agree. That's what it needs. This thing needs to be weathered and beaten and look dusty and old, and then it works. Then it's got its magic. And this is the reason why I wouldn't condone this particular model. For me...
No, but give it 30 years of being on my wrist and it'll look great.
Oh, I have no doubts about that.
Okay. So guys, listen, thank you for joining us for Talking Hands. Join us next time, when we'll probably still be squabbling. Although, yeah, we've been pretty good this time.
No,
We've almost agreed.
We've almost agreed. It's rare. We're going to try and find a lot more animosity and disagreement next time.
So next time, no doubt, we'll be squabbling. We'll certainly still be drinking, that's for sure. And just generally behaving like watch nerds. Until then, please wear your watches in very good health.
In good health, guys. Cheers. Good night.